Sister Seraphina stood in the observation deck of the massive ship called Sanctum Eternus. Through the thick glass, she watched the dying world below. Red and orange fires burned across its surface. The planet was sick. Like so many worlds the vampires had left behind over the centuries, she had been on this ship for 300 years. 300 years of prayer, of service, of trying to find peace in her immortal soul. The Sanguine Order had given her purpose after she became a vampire. They taught her that through faith and distance from mortals, she could find redemption for what she had become. The ship was like a giant cathedral floating in space. Its walls were made of white stone and metal. Stained glass windows showed scenes of saints and angels. Thousands of vampire nuns lived here, all seeking the same thing, forgiveness for their nature. They prayed, they worked, they helped the sick and dying on the worlds below. They never got too close to humans. That was the rule. Vampires were dangerous. They had appetites that could hurt mortals. So they kept their distance, served from afar, and hoped that God would see their good works and forgive them for being monsters. Sister Seraphina had red hair that she kept covered with a white veil. Her skin was pale like moonlight. Her eyes were deep blue, but sometimes they turned red when she was hungry or angry. She was tall and moved with the grace that all vampires had. But unlike many of her kind, she never felt comfortable with what she was. The doors behind her opened with a soft hiss. Mother Superior Agatha entered the observation deck. She was older than Seraphina, maybe 500 years old. Her face was stern but kind. "Sister, we have a visitor arriving today," Mother Superior said. "A human scientist. He wants to study our kind." Seraphina turned around. "A human? Here? On our ship?" "Yes, the church has approved this research. They believe it might help both our species understand each other better. You have been chosen to guide him during his stay." Seraphina felt something strange in her chest. Fear? Excitement? She had not been alone with a human in decades. The Order taught that such contact was dangerous. Humans were fragile. Vampires were predators. It was better to keep apart. "Mother Superior, I am not sure I am the right choice," Seraphina said. "Perhaps Sister Maria would be better. She has more control over her urges." Mother Superior smiled. "Sister, you have not fed on a human in over 2 centuries. You have shown remarkable discipline, and you speak many languages. This scientist needs someone who can communicate well. You are the best choice." Seraphina nodded. The worry filled her heart. She had worked so hard to control herself. What if being near a human brought back the hunger? What if she hurt him? 2 hours later, she stood in the docking bay. The human ship was small compared to the Sanctum Eternus. It was silver and sleek, built for speed rather than beauty. Steam rose from its engines as they cooled. The airlock opened. A man stepped out. He was not what Seraphina expected. He was tall but not as tall as most vampires. His hair was black with some gray at the sides. His skin was tan from working under different suns. He wore simple clothes, dark pants and a blue shirt. But what struck her most were his eyes. They were brown and bright with curiosity. When he saw her, he did not step back in fear. He did not lower his gaze in respect or terror. He smiled. "Hello," he said, walking toward her. "You must be Sister Seraphina. I am Captain Marcus Chun. Thank you for agreeing to help me with my research." He held out his hand. Seraphina stared at it. In all her centuries, she could count on her fingers how many humans had offered to touch her willingly. Most were afraid. They knew what vampires could do. Slowly, she took his hand. His skin was warm. She could feel his pulse beating strong and steady. But instead of making her hungry, it made her feel calm, strange. "Welcome to the Sanctum Eternus, Captain Chun," she said, I hope your stay here will be educational. Please, call me Marcus. I'm sure it will be. I've read everything I could find about your people, but reading and meeting are very different things. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Serafina pointed out different areas. The prayer halls where hundreds of vampire nuns gathered for worship. The medical bays where they treated sick refugees from dying worlds. The workshops where they built supplies for planets in need. Marcus listened to everything. He asked questions that surprised her. How do you feel when you help people? He asked as they passed a group of nuns packing medicine for a relief mission. Feel? Serafina was confused by the question. Yes. Does it make you happy? Sad? Does it fill some need in you? No one had ever asked her about her feelings before. The order taught that vampires should focus on duty, not emotion. I suppose it makes me feel useful. Like I am making up for what I am. Marcus stopped walking. Making up for what you are? You mean being a vampire? Of course. We are predators by nature. Dangerous. The church teaches us that through service, we can find redemption for our dark nature. Marcus looked thoughtful. In my travels, I have met many species. Some are born hunters, some are born prey. But I have never met any species that needed redemption for their nature. They just are what they are. This idea was strange to Serafina. She had spent centuries believing she needed forgiveness for existing. They reached the guest quarters where Marcus would stay. It was a simple room with a bed, a desk, and a small window showing the stars. This will be perfect, Marcus said. When can we begin? I am eager to learn about vampire physiology and culture. Tomorrow morning, if that suits you. But Captain, Marcus, why are you not afraid of me? Marcus tilted his head. Should I be? Most humans are terrified of vampires. We are stronger, faster. We drink blood. We could kill you easily. Could you? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? I mean, could you actually hurt me? Not physically. I know you are stronger. But could you actually choose to harm me? Serafina thought about it. The idea of hurting this curious, kind human made her feel sick. No, she said quietly. I do not think I could. Marcus smiled again. Then, why should I be afraid? You have chosen to dedicate your life to helping others. Your strength makes you a better protector, not a threat. That night, Serafina lay in her small room thinking about Marcus's words. No one had ever suggested that being a vampire could be anything other than a curse to overcome. For the first time in 3 centuries, she wondered if everything she had been taught was wrong. For 2 weeks, Marcus worked in the ship's laboratory. Sister Serafina spent hours with him each day, answering his questions and helping him understand vampire society. She found herself looking forward to their meetings more than she should. Marcus was different from any human she had ever met. He treated her like an equal. He listened when she spoke about her long life, her memories of worlds long dead, her struggles with faith. He never looked at her with pity or fear. In return, she learned about him. He had spent his life studying different alien species. He believed that understanding each other was the key to peace in the galaxy. His curiosity was endless. He wanted to know everything about how vampires lived, how they thought, how their bodies worked. Your cellular structure is fascinating, he said one morning as he looked through his microscope. Your cells regenerate much faster than human cells. It is what makes you immortal. Serafina watched him work. His hands moved quickly and carefully over the instruments. Is that why you are here? To learn how we heal so fast? Partly. But I am also curious about something else. I have been comparing blood samples from vampires of different ages. He showed her several slides under the microscope. Each one had vampire blood cells on it. Look at this one, he said, pointing to the first slide. This is from a vampire who was turned 50 years ago. See how bright and strong the cells look. Serafina looked through the microscope. The cells glowed with health and energy. Now look at this one. He changed the slide. This is from a vampire who is 300 years old. The cells looked different. They were dimmer, more fragile. And this one is from a vampire who is 800 years old. These cells looked sick. They moved slowly and seemed to be breaking apart. Serafina stepped back from the microscope. What does this mean? Marcus's face was serious. I think vampires are not truly immortal. Your cells are aging, just very slowly. Each generation gets weaker. Eventually, your species might not be able to survive. The words hit Serafina like a physical blow. Everything she had been taught said that vampires lived forever. It was part of what made them different from humans. If Marcus was right, then her people were slowly dying out. But there is more, Marcus said. I found something else. Something that might change everything. He pulled out another slide. This is vampire blood after it has been mixed with human blood. Serafina looked through the microscope again. The vampire cells looked completely different. They were bright and strong, even stronger than the young vampire cells. I do not understand, she said. Human blood seems to heal vampire cells. It makes them young again. But more than that. Marcus paused, as if he was not sure he should continue. What? I tested this with actual contact between humans and vampires. Not just blood mixing, but close physical contact. Touching, holding hands, even just being near each other for long periods. He showed her charts and numbers that proved his point. When vampires and humans spend time close together, the vampire cells become healthier. Much healthier. Serafina felt her world turning upside down. But the church teaches us to stay away from humans. They say close contact is dangerous, that it leads to sin. What if they are wrong? Marcus asked gently. What if staying apart is what is killing your people? That afternoon, Serafina could not concentrate on her prayers. Marcus's words echoed in her mind. She had always felt empty, incomplete. She had thought it was because she was a monster seeking redemption. But what if it was because she was denying her true nature? She found Marcus in the laboratory that evening. He was still working, making notes and running more tests. Marcus, she said, if what you have found is true, what does it mean for my people? He set down his instruments and looked at her with sad eyes. It means that everything your church has taught you might be wrong. You are not supposed to stay apart from humans. You are supposed to be close to us. Maybe even, he stopped. Maybe even what? Maybe even intimate with us. The strongest healing happened when the contact was closest. When there was real emotional connection, not just physical touch. Serafina sat down heavily in a chair. The order would call that heresy. They teach that vampires who become intimate with humans are committing the greatest sin. What do you believe? The question was simple, but it cut through everything she had been taught. What did she believe? I believe, she said slowly, that God would not create vampires to suffer alone. I believe that if humans can heal us, then maybe that is what God intended. Marcus smiled. You are very wise, sister. What happens now? What do we do with this knowledge? I think we need to tell people. Both humans and vampires need to know the truth. But Serafina knew it would not be that simple. The next day, she was called to meet with Mother Superior Agatha and 2 elder vampires who had come from the High Council. Their faces were stern. Sister Serafina, Mother Superior began, we understand that Captain Chun has made some claims about vampire biology. He has discovered important truths about our people, Serafina said carefully. Elder Vampire Cassius stepped forward. He was ancient, maybe 1,000 years old. His eyes were cold as ice. These so-called truths are dangerous lies. They suggest that vampires should abandon our holy calling and consort with mortals. But what if they are not lies? Serafina asked. What if Captain Chun is right? Elder vampire Helena spoke next. She was almost as old as Cassius. Child, you have been deceived. This human seeks to corrupt our people. He wants to break down the barriers that keep humans safe from us. He wants to save our people, Serafina said, her voice growing stronger. He has proof that we are dying. That staying apart from humans is killing us slowly. Cassius's eyes flashed red with anger. Enough! You will cease this research immediately. You will tell this human that his work is finished. He will leave our ship tomorrow, and if I refuse? Mother Superior looked sad. Sister, do not make this harder than it needs to be. The order is clear. You must choose between obedience to the church and these dangerous ideas. Serafina felt something breaking inside her chest. Not her heart, but the chains that had bound her thoughts for 3 centuries. Then I choose truth, she said quietly. That night, she found Marcus packing his belongings. His face was grim. They told you to leave, she said. Yes, and they told me that if I publish my research, they will consider it an act of war against the vampire people. Serafina stood in his doorway, watching him fold his clothes. What will you do? What I always do. I will seek the truth, no matter what powerful people want to hide, and I will help you. Marcus stopped packing and looked at her. Serafina, you could lose everything. Your home, your sisters, your faith. My faith tells me that love and healing cannot be sins. If the church disagrees, then perhaps I am following the wrong church. Marcus walked over to her. Slowly, carefully, he took her hands in his. Just as he had predicted, she felt stronger when he touched her, more alive than she had felt in centuries. Are you sure about this? He asked. Serafina looked into his kind brown eyes and made her choice. I am sure. Marcus and Serafina worked in secret for the next 3 days. They used a small laboratory in the lower levels of the ship where few people went. Marcus continued his research while Serafina helped him understand vampire culture and history. I need to show you something important, Marcus said on the 3rd night. He had been working with special equipment that could see energy fields. Around living things. He turned on a machine that made a soft humming sound. On the screen, Serafina could see herself glowing with a pale blue light. This shows your bioelectric field, Marcus explained. Every living thing has one, but they are all different. The image of Serafina on the screen pulsed slowly. The blue light around her body looked steady but somehow incomplete, like a broken circle. Now watch this, Marcus said. He moved closer to her until they were standing side by side. The screen changed completely. Where there had been one pale blue glow, there were now 2 lights, Seraphine's blue and Marcus's bright golden yellow. But more amazing, the lights were connecting to each other. Golden streams of energy flowed from Marcus to Serafina, and blue streams flowed from her to him. Humans have a different bioelectric field than any other species in the galaxy, Marcus said, his voice excited. We developed it because Earth was such a harsh world. The magnetic storms, the radiation, the constant danger. It forced humans to evolve this special energy. Serafina stared at the screen. Where the golden and blue lights mixed, they created something beautiful, a bright white glow that seemed to pulse with life. This energy is what heals vampire cells, Marcus continued. But it does more than that. Look at your field now. Seraphine's blue light was no longer broken and incomplete. It formed a perfect circle around her body, bright and strong. You are not just healing my cells, she whispered. You are completing something that was missing. Yes, and you are doing something for me too. See how my field is more stable when you are near? Vampires ground human energy. You make it stronger and more controlled. Marcus turned off the machine and sat down at his desk. His face was serious again. Serafina, I think this is why vampires exist. Not as predators or monsters, but as partners for humans. Your species and mine are meant to work together. The idea was so different from everything Serafina had been taught that she felt dizzy. But vampires were created by a disease, a virus that changed us. What if that virus came from outside Earth? What if it was meant to prepare humans for contact with your people? Before Serafina could answer, they heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Marcus quickly shut down his equipment while Serafina moved to the door. Sister Maria appeared, looking worried. Serafina, you must come quickly. The Elder Council has called an emergency meeting. They know about your research. In the Great Assembly Hall, hundreds of vampire nuns gathered. Mother Superior Agatha stood at the front with the Elder Council. Their faces were grim. Elder Cassius spoke first. Sisters, we have discovered that dangerous ideas are spreading among our people. There is talk that vampires should abandon our holy separation from mortals. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some sisters looked shocked, others curious. These ideas come from a human scientist who seeks to corrupt our pure mission, Elder Helena added. He claims that we need humans to survive, that our immortality is false. More murmurs, louder now. Serafina could see that some of her sisters were interested, not horrified. Sister Catherine, who was almost as old as the elders, stood up. What if these claims are true? What if we have been living a lie? Silence. Cassius shouted. His eyes flashed red with anger. We have lived in purity for 1,000 years. We will not be led astray by human tricks. But other sisters began to speak up. Sister Anna, who worked in the medical bay, said she had noticed that vampires who worked closely with human patients always seemed healthier. Sister Rebecca mentioned that the oldest vampires in the order were getting weaker each year, not staying the same as immortals should. Young Sister Grace, who had only been turned 50 years ago, asked why she felt so empty all the time. Why prayer and service never seemed to fill the hollow feeling inside her. The Elder Council tried to maintain order, but too many questions were being asked. Too many sisters were remembering things they had noticed but never talked about. Finally, Mother Superior Agatha raised her hand for silence. When the hall was quiet, she looked directly at Serafina. Sister Serafina, you have been working with this human. Tell us what you have learned. Serafina stood up slowly. She could feel the eyes of all her sisters on her. These women had been her family for centuries. Whatever she said now would change everything. I have learned that we are not monsters, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. I have learned that humans do not fear us because they should, but because we have taught them to. She took a deep breath. I have learned that our bodies are dying slowly, and that human contact can heal us. But more than that, I have learned that we complete each other. Humans and vampires together are stronger than either species alone. Elder Cassius stepped forward. And what of sin? What of the purity we have maintained for centuries? What sin is there in healing? What sin is there in helping each other survive and grow stronger? The hall erupted in discussion. Sisters turned to each other, arguing, questioning, wondering. Some supported the elders. Others supported Serafina, but the damage was done. The idea had been planted. Across the ship, vampires began to wonder if everything they had been taught was wrong. Over the next few days, the news spread beyond the Sanctum Eternus. Other vampire ships received messages. Human colonies heard rumors. The galactic communication networks carried whispers of the discovery. Some vampire communities rejected the idea completely. They doubled down on separation, calling any vampire who believed Marcus's research a heretic. But other vampires began to seek out humans. They wanted to test the theory for themselves. They wanted to see if close contact really could heal them. Human reactions were mixed too. Some humans were afraid that vampires would use this as an excuse to get closer and feed on them. Others were curious about the scientific implications. But there were humans who remembered working with vampires in the past. Doctors who had noticed that vampire colleagues seemed healthier when they worked together. Soldiers who had fought alongside vampires and felt an unusual connection. On the 5th day after the meeting, Marcus was officially ordered to leave the ship. But by then, it was too late to stop what had started. As Marcus packed his equipment in the laboratory, Serafina made her final choice. "I am coming with you," she said. Marcus looked up from his instruments. "Serafina, you do not have to do this. This is your home." "This was my prison," she corrected. "I want to help you prove that we are right. I want to show the galaxy that humans and vampires can be partners, not enemies." Marcus smiled, but his eyes were worried. "It will be dangerous. There will be people on both sides who want to stop us. Then we will need each other more than ever." That night, as they prepared to leave the Sanctum Eternus together, Serafina felt something she had not felt in 300 years: hope. Marcus and Serafina traveled together on his small ship for 3 weeks. During that time, they visited different human and vampire communities across the galaxy. What they found both excited and worried them. On the human colony of New Geneva, they met Dr. Sarah Williams, a human doctor who had worked with vampire medics during a plague outbreak 5 years earlier. "I always wondered why I felt so energetic when the vampires were around," Dr. Williams said as they sat in her office. "And the vampires seemed different too, less cold, more alive." She agreed to let Marcus test her bioelectric field with vampire contact. The results were even better than on the Sanctum Eternus. When Dr. Williams held hands with a vampire volunteer, both their energy fields brightened dramatically. But not everyone was happy about these discoveries. On the vampire world of Nocturna Prime, the ancient vampire Lord Dracul refused to even meet with them. His message was clear: any vampire who consorts with humans will be considered a traitor to our kind. The human government was also growing nervous. Admiral Peterson of the Earth Defense Force called Marcus while they were traveling. "Captain Chun," the admiral said over the communication screen, "your research is causing problems. We have reports of unauthorized contact between humans and vampires. Some humans are getting hurt." Marcus frowned. "What kind of problems?" "Vampires who cannot control themselves when they get close to humans. Humans who think they can handle vampire contact but get in over their heads. We need you to stop this research before people die." After the call ended, Serafina sat quietly for a long time. "Maybe they are right," she said finally. "Maybe some vampires cannot be trusted around humans." Marcus took her hands in his. As always, she felt stronger when he touched her. Some humans cannot be trusted around other humans either. That does not mean humans should never interact. But the problems were real. They heard reports of vampires losing control and attacking humans they were trying to connect with. They also heard of humans who thought they could tame vampires and ended up dead. "We need to find a way to make this safe," Serafina said. Their answer came from an unexpected source. On the research station Harmony Point, they met Dr. Elizabeth Foster, a human psychologist who studied interspecies relationships. "The problem is not the contact itself," Dr. Foster explained. "It is the lack of preparation. Both sides need to understand what they are getting into." She showed them her research. Humans and vampires who had slowly built trust and understanding over time could form safe, healthy bonds. But those who rushed into contact without preparation often had problems. "It is like any relationship," Dr. Foster said. It requires patience, communication, and mutual respect. This gave Marcus and Seraphina hope. They could teach others how to form safe bonds. They could create guidelines and training programs but before they could do that, they received an urgent message. The Vampire High Council had called for a galaxy-wide gathering. All vampire leaders were ordered to attend. They want to end this once and for all, Seraphina said as she read the message. The gathering was held on the ancient vampire homeworld of Sanguinara. Thousands of vampires from across the galaxy came. The atmosphere was tense. Seraphina had not been this nervous in centuries. As they entered the great council chamber, she could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. This room had seen decisions that affected entire species. The Vampire High Council sat on a raised platform. 7 ancient vampires, each over 1,000 years old. At their center sat the eldest, Lord Malthus, who was said to be over 2,000 years old. Lord Malthus spoke in a voice like winter wind. "We have gathered to address the heresy that threatens our people. The claim that vampires need humans to survive." He gestured to Marcus and Seraphina. "These two have spread dangerous lies. They would have us abandon our noble isolation and become dependent on mortals." The crowd murmured angrily. Many vampires still believed that staying separate was the only safe way, but not all. Seraphina was surprised to see many faces in the crowd that looked thoughtful rather than angry. The weeks of spreading information had had an effect. Vampire Lord Cassius from the Sanctum Eternus stepped forward. "My lord, I propose that we exile this vampire nun and forbid any further contact with humans. We must protect our people from corruption." Cheers rose from part of the crowd, but other voices called out in disagreement. "What if she is right?" shouted a young vampire from the back. "What if we are dying slowly?" "I have felt stronger since I started working with humans," called another. Lord Malthus raised his hand for silence. "These claims will be tested. But first, the human will speak. Tell us, mortal, why you seek to change our ways." Marcus stood up. Seraphina could see that he was afraid, but he did not show it. He spoke clearly and calmly. "I do not seek to change your ways for my benefit," he said. "I seek to save your people from extinction. My research shows that vampire immortality is failing. Without human contact, your species will die out within a few centuries." "Lies," shouted some vampires. "Proof," demanded others. Marcus presented his data. He showed the cellular decay, the energy field interactions, the healing effects of human-vampire contact. Many vampires listened with growing interest. When Marcus finished, Lord Malthus turned to Seraphina. "And you, sister, you have abandoned your sacred vows for this human's theories. What do you say for yourself?" Seraphina stood slowly. She looked around the chamber at thousands of faces, some angry, some curious, some hopeful. "My lords," she began, "I have served the church faithfully for 3 centuries. I have prayed, I have fasted, I have kept myself apart from mortals as I was taught." She paused, gathering her courage. "But I have never felt the presence of God more strongly than when I'm with Marcus. I have never felt more alive, more complete, more capable of doing good. If that is sin, then I do not understand what virtue means." The chamber erupted. Vampires shouted at each other. Some called for her execution. Others called for her to be heard. Lord Malthus stood up, his ancient power filling the room. "Enough! We will test these claims. One volunteer from each side will undergo the bonding process while we watch. If they survive and show improvement, we will consider allowing limited contact. If they fail, both will die, and this heresy will end." The chamber fell silent. This was more dangerous than Seraphina had expected. "I volunteer," she said immediately. "And I volunteer as well," Marcus added, stepping up beside her. Lord Malthus smiled coldly. So be it. Tomorrow at sunset, you will attempt this bonding before the council. Success or failure, you will be our final answer to this question. As they left the chamber, Seraphina felt Marcus take her hand. Are you ready for this? He asked quietly. She looked into his kind brown eyes and saw her choice clearly. She could return to the safety of the old ways, except that she was a monster who needed to stay apart from the world. Or she could choose to trust in what felt right in her heart. I have been ready for this my whole life, she said. I just did not know it until now. The night before the test, Seraphina could not sleep. She walked in the gardens outside the council building, looking up at the red moon of Sanguinara. Marcus found her there, sitting by a fountain carved with images of ancient vampire kings. Having second thoughts? He asked, sitting beside her. No, she said. But I am thinking about what happens after. If we succeed, everything changes. If we fail, we will not fail. Marcus's voice was calm and sure. I have seen the data. I have felt the connection between us. This is right, Seraphina. She turned to look at him. In the moonlight, his face was peaceful. Are you not afraid? Terrified, he admitted with a small smile. But not of dying. I am afraid that we might not be strong enough to handle what comes after. Changing the minds of entire species is harder than changing their biology. The next evening, thousands of vampires gathered in the great amphitheater. The 7 members of the High Council sat on their platform, watching with ancient eyes. Lord Malthus had brought special equipment to monitor the test. Marcus and Seraphina stood in the center of the arena. Above them, giant screens would show their bioelectric fields to everyone watching. Begin when you are ready, Lord Malthus announced. Seraphina looked at Marcus. They had discussed what they would do, but now that the moment was here, she felt uncertain. Trust me, Marcus whispered. Trust yourself. He took her hands in his. Immediately, she felt the familiar surge of energy and completion. On the screens above them, the crowd could see their energy fields connecting, her blue light and his golden glow mixing into brilliant white. But Marcus did not stop there. He pulled her closer until they were embracing. Seraphina felt something she had never experienced before, a connection that went deeper than physical touch. Deeper than shared energy. It was as if Marcus's soul was reaching out to hers, offering to share not just his life force, but his very being. She could feel his memories, his love for her, and she realized that she could offer the same thing back. She opened her heart completely, sharing with him all the centuries of loneliness and searching, all her dreams of finding purpose, all her love for him that she had been afraid to admit even to herself. The screens above them exploded with light. The energy connection between them grew so bright that some vampires in the crowd had to shield their eyes. But something else was happening too. Seraphina felt her body changing. Not just healing, transforming. She was still a vampire, still immortal, but the predatory hunger that had haunted her for centuries was gone. In its place was something warm and protective. She wanted to guard and care for humans, not feed on them. Marcus was changing too. She could feel his human fragility becoming something stronger, more durable. Their bond was making him more than human, though still completely himself. The crowd watched in amazement as the changes became visible. Seraphine's pale skin gained a soft glow. Marcus's eyes began to shine with inner light. They were becoming something new, not human, not vampire, but a combination of both species' strengths. When the bonding was complete, they separated slowly. The amphitheater was completely silent. Lord Malthus studied the readings from his instruments. His ancient face showed surprise and something that might have been wonder. The cellular regeneration is complete, he announced. Not only have the vampire's damaged cells been healed, but they have been transformed into something stronger than before. He paused, consulting another device. The human's life force has been expanded significantly. His natural lifespan appears to have increased by centuries. Murmurs spread through the crowd. This was more than anyone had expected. Furthermore, Lord Malthus continued, both subjects show enhanced abilities. The vampire has gained better control over her predatory instincts. The human has gained vampire-like strength and speed, while retaining his human empathy and creativity. Elder Cassius stood up from his seat. This is impossible. Vampires cannot change their fundamental nature. Apparently, they can, Lord Malthus replied, when they bond with the right partner. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Traditional vampires argued that this proved nothing, that it was too dangerous to attempt widely. Progressive vampires said it proved everything, that they should immediately begin forming bonds with humans. Finally, Lord Malthus called for order. We have seen proof that human-vampire bonding is not only possible, but beneficial to both species. However, we must proceed carefully. He looked down at Marcus and Seraphina. You two will establish a training center. You will teach others how to form these bonds safely. We will begin with volunteers only, and we will monitor the results carefully. It was not everything Seraphina had hoped for, but it was a beginning. Over the next 5 years, the training center on Harmony Point became the most important place in the galaxy for human-vampire relations. Marcus and Seraphina taught thousands of couples how to form safe, healthy bonds. They learned that not every human and vampire could bond successfully. It required emotional compatibility, mutual respect, and genuine love. But for those who could connect, the results were always remarkable. The changes spread throughout both species. Human colonies that welcomed vampire partners became healthier and more peaceful. Vampire communities that embraced human contact became less isolated and more involved in helping others. There were still problems. Some traditional vampires never accepted the new way. Some humans remained afraid of vampire contact. But slowly, carefully, the two species began to work together as partners rather than staying apart. Seraphina established a new order of vampire nuns, the Order of Unity. These sisters dedicated themselves to fostering understanding between humans and vampires. They provided healing, counseling, and education to mixed communities across the galaxy. The old Sanguine Order did not disappear completely. Some convents chose to maintain the traditional separation, but many others followed Seraphine's example, opening their doors to human partners and friends. Marcus continued his research, but now he studied how different species could help each other thrive. He discovered that humans had similar beneficial effects on several other alien races, though none as dramatic as with vampires. 10 years after their bonding, Seraphina stood once again in an observation deck, watching a world below. But this world was not dying. It was a new colony where humans and vampires worked together to build something beautiful. Marcus came up behind her and put his arms around her waist. She leaned back against him, feeling the constant warm connection that had become as natural as breathing. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving up your old life?" Seraphina smiled, watching vampire and human children playing together in the colony's gardens far below. "I did not give up my life," she said. "I finally began living it." In the years that followed, their example spread to dozens of worlds. Human-vampire partnerships became common, even celebrated. The galaxy became a richer, more connected place. And in the training center's chapel, where Seraphina still held services for those who sought spiritual guidance, the old prayer had been changed. Instead of asking for forgiveness for their nature, the congregation now prayed, "Help us to use our gifts in service of love. Help us to build bridges where others see only walls. Help us to choose connection over isolation, understanding over fear, and unity over division." because they had learned that the greatest sin was not in loving across species boundaries. The greatest sin was in refusing to love at all.